Welcome back. You're watching the Power Breakfast Show, and this morning in studio we want to talk about matters politics. Quad Party is calling for a referendum, have 13 issues they have pointed out they think that need to be addressed as soon as possible. And to have that discussion and see what exactly is going on in studio, we're joined by Honourable Member of Parliament for Kibra, Mr. Ken Okoth, together with Honourable Kavando. He's a Member of Parliament for Mokoroine, and of course Mutegi Njau is here to join me as well. A very good morning to you, gentlemen, and thank you for coming. And maybe Mutegi, you can start us off. Many questions, and remember, if you want to join in the conversation, 22422 is the SMS line. Please send us your comments, suggestions, questions, and your views. We'll be fielding them to the panelists today.
Maybe to start with that referendum thing. There are 13 things. A referendum normally is one issue. How do you condense them?
Very good. What I would say is let's discuss, first of all, what is allowed in our Constitution and the process by which we get to a referendum. A referendum is provided for in our Constitution, and a lot of the arguments you've been hearing this weekend from the Jubilee side is that the timing is not right and that it's going to cost us money. Well, we think the timing is right. It's our democratic right to express that. And we think that the same people who hypocritically tell us it's going to cost a lot of money to have a referendum now did not bat an eyelid, did not raise their voices when the money was being wasted by the IEBC, giving us a broken down system that did not give us a very transparent, credible election. Last year, everybody was silent. It was convenient for them. But now, suddenly, they're interested in saving money. Yet this is the same Jubilee administration that's eager to pay Anglo-leasing, but is not willing to listen to the voices of the people. So our Constitution provides for a direct engagement with the people.
People, which people?
The Kenyan people.
Thank you, Mr. Because the question is, when you say you're speaking on behalf of Kenyans, who are you speaking on behalf of? Because I will say, personally, I was not asked any question.
Fine, thank you. Let us look at the facts. We went to an election March 2014. Raila Odinga as a presidential candidate and Kalonzo Musyoka, and without any inflation of the numbers. In fact, we believe through a connivance of the system, their numbers were depressed. But we got more than 43% of the vote. We control 24 governorships in these countries, about 1,000 members of the county assembly, more than 150 members of parliament and the Senate. So if you want to dismiss and pretend CORD does not speak for the people of Kenya and any people of Kenya, then you're lying to yourself. That's a basic starting point. We have a people that we legitimately represent in our Constitution, and let us not pretend that having an opposition is an inconvenience for the ruling party. It's actually a right part of the system that exists, and that the ruling party should govern and push its agenda and should listen to any input that it thinks it's worthy from the opposition, but should not totally dismiss it and say, we don't want the opposition. If you go back to March this year, we were saying from the Jubilee side very clearly, the opposition is bure kabisa. They're useless, they're quiet, they're disengaged, they're not providing anything meaningful. But the truth of the matter is, we got the government of Jubilee elected last year, 2013. They had a honeymoon of more than 12 months to deliver their agenda. We never stopped them. But what we have seen in that honeymoon of Jubilee is that regular Kenyan citizens have been having sleepless nights. The price of milk has gone from 30 bob to 50 bob. The price of unga has gone from 90 bob to 115.
Okay, we'll discuss that.
Same things.
We'll go to that.
So Kenyans have been having sleepless nights, and now the opposition has woken up and is bringing up these issues, wants to hold the government accountable, and the government is having sleepless nights.
Okay. Let's get a reaction from Mheshimiwa Kabando.
I think the big question should be, what does CORD want? Because since last year, they protested the outcome of the elections. They went to Supreme Court. The ruling was made. They congratulated the Jubilee presidency. But a few weeks later, they were again crying that the ruling was not in their favor. And this was a constitutional court created in the new dispensation. Shortly thereafter, there was a call for a referendum. Shortly thereafter, disbandment of the IEBC. Shortly thereafter, bastardization of the constitutional bodies that are Parliament, that's the Senate and the National Assembly. may it be known and appreciated that this is perhaps a diversionary tactic to convince people to sympathize with a losing scenario, because it is not consistent with the agenda. On the end of this month, I had the opportunity with the 14 of my colleagues drawn from CORD and Jubilee to have an exclusive meeting with the leader of CORD, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, his deputy Kalonzo Musyoka, and the leader of minority in the Senate, who is a co-principal in CORD, Moses Wetangula. After a meeting in his office, proceeded to Capitol Hill. And when he spoke for 1 hour with Honorable Raila, just that Thursday before the Sabasaba Monday, it was very clear from him, and he told us explicitly that he has no confidence in Parliament. And that means he has no confidence in the National Assembly and in the Senate. And he's sitting at the end of the table, talking to these 15 members of Parliament who are representing the 25 who constitute the caucus on peace, which is chaired by Reverend Mutamu Simi, was Moses Wetangula. We had just left his office at the National Assembly, very well taken care of by the taxpayers. He drove in his GK Prado to Capitol Hill. He represents CORD in the Senate as minority leader. If you go to National Assembly, you have the leader of minority, you have the whip, and the other officials facilitated. Now the question should be, if CORD does not believe in the National Assembly and does not believe in the Senate and in the ones of Raila Odinga, to paraphrase him, the National Assembly and the Senate have no credibility and they have become rogue. These are institutions we created in 2010. Then, if we agree that I'm a member of Parliament, he is a member of Parliament, we are in Parliament, in the National Assembly and in the Senate, and we are elected democratically by people expressing their sovereign will through voting freely and fairly, free franchise. And we have governors elected the same. We have members of the county assembly constituting 47 county assemblies in this country. And of the 47 county governments, 24 are controlled by CORD. Does it mean that IBC was right on MCAs, on members of parliament, on senators, on governors, but was only wrong on the presidency?
Let him answer that.
Yeah.
Let him answer that.
Very good. Let me tell you, for instance, I think the question he's trying to say here is that he's speaking for Raila Odinga, and he knows that Raila Odinga has said or believes that the Senate and the National Assembly are illegitimate. If that was the official CORD position, we would all resign. The fact that we're engaged in the National Assembly gives it legitimacy. We are there, and we're not stepping back, and we will hold the Jubilee administration accountable in Parliament and outside of Parliament through constitutional means. That is very clear. And you saw this panic that the government had even around Sabasaba. Our freedom to assemble was being attacked and making them very uncomfortable. Somehow the government was able to marshal 15,000 security officers to protect 5,000 CORD members to show up at a rally at Kamkunji. If that was not at Uhuru Park, if that was not intimidation or a waste of resources, I don't know what tells it better. Meanwhile, people are being slaughtered.
But we did not ask for security.
We did not ask for 15,000 soldiers to be sent on the street. We asked for regular security to make sure that no thugs would come in to destroy life or property, because we had no agenda to destroy lives or property. Our people were coming to participate in a peaceful assembly and to engage with their leaders. If you think our ideas are irrelevant, you're free to ignore them. But it does not make sense to ring fence. And I'll let Kabando not interrupt me. Okay. I did not interrupt.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Let us speak about, he pretends to speak for Raila Odinga. I will tell you for sure that this is a misrepresentation of the position of my party leader. We know that the National Assembly is a part of the Constitution, and we have a role to play in there. Despite the tyranny of numbers from the Jubilee side, they can vote in any issues that they want. But our members participate actively in committees which try to shape legislation. And I think this is something very dangerous and we must be sensitive about. This National Assembly, the 11th Parliament, has been very effective if you compare to any other National Assembly we've ever had before. The elections that we had in 2013, we in CORD have got questions in which the manner and the tallying of the presidential votes was done. That is very questionable to us. We acceded because we said, okay, once it goes to the Supreme Court, that is what our constitution allows. And at that point,
so
we have to
go back
for
to
the
the
next
subject?
No, we are free to talk about everything we want to talk. What I'm telling you is, for instance, in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, the report and the results that were submitted for the presidential elections are different from the report and the results that were submitted by IEBC to the Supreme Court. That is a matter of fact. Are you as a Kenyan satisfied that your billions were spent to produce two different sets of presidential election results?
Can I intervene?
One at the Supreme Court and one at Parliament.
Honorable Okoth.
Can I intervene?
Okay.
I think we should also be fair to the Republic of Kenya and the owners of Kenya, the people who go to elections. We cannot misuse our positions as parliamentarians to say that because I sit in a certain committee, that the results that were submitted were different. In fact, the head of the presidential election was when the Supreme Court made a ruling. Anything you say beyond the Supreme Court is a rumor.
Yes.
You are just perhaps engaging in a not so worthy a cause. Whether you talk about the Legal Affairs Committee, you talk about, and by the way, I want somebody to correct me on the authority of the meeting and in the public pronouncement of Raila Odinga, the ultimate supreme leader of God. He has no faith in the National Assembly. He says that the numbers are being misused in the National Assembly. But this National Assembly, if really people elected the members, and these members became a majority in one coalition, and the other coalition agreed to be in the minority and took their positions within the Senate and within the National Assembly, what are we complaining about? The fact remains, I am not speaking and I cannot speak for Raila Odinga, but I'm quoting him and I would like him to come out and tell Kenyans whether he did not say, he has not said inside meetings and in public galleries that Parliament and the Senate cannot be trusted. Now the point is, you don't trust the IEBC. You don't trust the Supreme Court. You don't trust the Senate, where your core principle sits. You don't trust the National Assembly. Perhaps you trust the governors. He is not talking about the governors, because CORD has 24 governors and Jubilee has 23 governors. He is not talking about the members of the county assemblies. I think the syndrome that is suffocating these individuals, and they need to outgrow it, is that Raila Odinga time is expiring. And by the way, when they went to Hood Park, they were going to make demands on dialogue. When they realized that they were fully covered, because it's the responsibility of the executive to provide security, I think the people should be happy, particularly CORD, that they were protected at the Hood Park. And businessmen in Kenya and workers in Nairobi should appreciate that the security was so nice, no shop was looted, and nobody was hurt. Everybody returned home to their areas of residence without any hurt or any violence. When they realized that that goal was not reached, they talk about a referendum. And this referendum has 13 issues. Can you tell me where you are going to say in the referendum question, we are going to reduce the cost of living?
Before we get there, let me ask you a question, Honorable Okoth. And there's something you mentioned earlier about two different reports that were tabled. Yes. So can we then say that CORD is looking for, it's a power battle, trying to get to the top using the referendum? Because you have said you have an issue with the report. There were two reports that were tabled. So is that CORD trying to get into leadership, into power?
I wouldn't put it that way. All I would say is that Kenyans should not be comfortable. I am not comfortable with making sure with a situation where the IEBC can submit one set of results to the Supreme Court and the IEBC submits another set of results to the legal committee when we're investigating the issues. That aside, let us put in the context of this matter that I think he has got something known as Raila phobia or Raila mania, the obsession with Raila. Raila is one person, and I let you know that Raila is beyond a person, is a movement. Is a principle of fighting for reforms in this country, that he has stood by it. And I think it's a shame that Honorable Kabando, who for a long time was a reformist, has suddenly become very comfortable with the status quo. We are not bringing the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation report in its pure version, without any corruption in it, to be debated in Parliament. Why? Because they have the power to stop that coming from. But this is the important issue, that when you go in and look at the chapter, for instance, on Mpeketoni, it's in there in the Truth and Justice report, and yet we're not bringing it up to discussion. Yet the Parliament is a place of the assembly that has the voices of the people represented. The context in which the Prime Minister said that Parliament is not the right venue for dialogue is just a question of format. In Parliament, you have only the elected members and the Speaker participating. The President, civil society, religious leaders, representatives of youth, representatives of women, representatives of workers, farmers, people with disabilities, who are all Kenyans, is a very important stake at this year of Jubilee, to make sure that the next 50 years of Kenya's progress is a period in which we see, actually, when we say raha tupate na ustawi, all Kenyans wanapata raha na ustawi. The reality is that people have not been getting that sense of national benefit for the last 50 years. It goes back to historical injustices about land. It goes back to things such as tribalism and discrimination happening now. The government that's predominantly led by two ethnic groups now in major appointments everywhere. Look at the Cabinet Secretary Rotich. He just appointed the public procurement body the other day, and it's all members of two groups. It tells you that national unity is getting lost, and those are not things that Raila Odinga has been responsible for. Kenyans have been dying in insecurity in Wajir, in Lamu, in Bungoma. Yes. All of those things that are not Raila Odinga.
Let me ask you something.
So let us stop talking about him and let us focus on the issues.
Let me ask you something about IEBC. You are very annoyed about IEBC, how they conduct the elections. Called an opportunity to have, or ODM, to have elections at Kasarani. And then came the men in black. How good are you when it comes to conducting elections?
Can I comment before he proceeds, please?
Let me answer that. How do you account for that? It's still the matter not resolved.
Yes. The tree with the best fruit get hit with the most stones. The fact that we had the most highly competitive elections for the ODM national election, with all parties interested, even non-members of ODM fully glued into it, is very important. Now, we've had an internal issue to look at how regrettable it is, and it was a sad thing that the young people, the men in black, for some reason or another were involved in this and disrupted at the end of a very successful national delegates conference. So what we need to go back as CORD is to clean up our house. Not even as CORD, as ODM. We are in the process of doing that. Let me inform you. Yes, we are. There is an internal conciliation system. We are having in members from both sides to make sure that our party will not be split, that all our best brains and devoted fighters, loyal members of ODM, will stick together and we'll have a joint team. But
I want to go to intervene.
The hot debate that went in there
at this juncture.
You're not a member of ODM.
Yes,
let me finish answering on ODM. So we will fix that. But let me tell you, when we talk about IEBC reform, I think we have a duty to inform the nation that you're misrepresenting what CORD is asking for. We're not just crying over spilt milk and sour grapes that we lost the last election. We have a plan how we'll organize ourselves and bring an alternative vision and have people vote for us in 2017. That's the Kenyans will say.
But
what we are saying is,
you can't wait for 2017.
Let me tell you what we want. When we talk about electoral reforms, what we want right now is there a fair way of registering citizens who are turning 18 and continuously registering them as voter, making sure that the IEBC is professionally getting the money it needs to budget for, and continually make sure that the registers are there, that it has a proper technology and training. So when we condemn in any way and critique the last IEBC, it's not about personalities of individual commissioners. It's saying that that IEBC failed in the proper putting together of that system, and that there was a lot of waste at a very high cost. We spent a lot of money and didn't get the quality of unimpeachable, even including relaying of results.
Let him respond.
You either are cold or you're hot. You're either white or you're black. The discussion here is about the leadership and about the referendum. And when you mention the individual, it is not about the personality and the private individual. It's about the public demeanor and public perception. So you can be spared of being told that you are fearful of Raila. He may be even personal friend to some of us, but you may disagree with him vehemently about particular matters. CORD is very confused, completely confused. And I can tell you, they are rudderless, clueless, headless, footless, directionless. And I can say how and why. In the parliament, they chair one of the most eloquent members of CORD, one of the stars of CORD, whom we respect, chairs the Public Accounts Committee. And when they are talking about the audited accounts that are used to allocate revenue to the county government, which they are saying they want to raise, and you are not opposed to raise in any case the allocation by Parliament, not by Jubilee. Budgetary allocations are being done by the National Assembly. And in that National Assembly, we have the Budget Committee. The hugest committee in Parliament is a Budget Committee of 51 members. And well-managed leadership, and you cannot blemish either CORD or Jubilee in that committee. And increasingly, we see allocations for the Continuous Development Fund, that evidence, and also for the county government being raised beyond the minimum. For the CDF is 2.5 of the ordinary revenue. For the county government is 15%. But you can see those percentages are higher because there is willingness. There is a tendency of the CORD leadership to attack and propagate issues that are completely false. That it is executive, Jubilee executive, that is determining. Let me tell you, in the budgetary process under the new dispensation, under the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, it is the National Assembly that has the final say of where the money is taken. We have seen it. And if the National Assembly is not in agreement, it is not done. And I can tell you, there has not been acrimony, there has not been disagreement about the allocations in the last financial year and also in the current financial year, meaning the backstops at the National Assembly.
So if there's poverty, people are dying.
And also,
people are dying under inflation.
Listen, let me tell you, the Public Investment Committee that is interrogating public investment, state corporations, is chaired by another luminary of CORD. A 3-time member of Parliament is the chair of that. The 2-time member is the chair of the PSC. So those are the main watchdog committees, PIC and the PSC. So we have to take responsibility and to tell both the Jubilee top leadership in the executive and the CORD leadership, both within Parliament, the Senate, and the National Assembly, and without, that it is we, the leaders elected by the people of Kenya, popularly determined to be incumbent in the National Assemblies, in the county assemblies, in the Senate, who are making those decisions. It is not Uhuru, neither is it Raila Odinga on the other side. That
what about security?
Then the question of elections. You know, why do we want to lie to Kenyans that what happened at Kasarani was simply sad and regrettable? It was diabolical. It was very shameful. And you know, I want to say 2 things.
What was it?
2 things. Number 1.
I said it was shameful. I can't believe we're still discussing this. I said it was shameful and regrettable.
He was responding to your
Don't respond.
But I said the same
Let me tell
thing.
you, it was the CORD practice of undemocratic culture at best. The leadership of CORD, all of them seated there. And these men, very cleanly dressed, fully in ties and in new suits, facilitated by CORD leadership as their security.
Of course.
Disrupted the elections, after which their leader escaped for 3 months. Didn't come back. The other thing that should be said is that we are also in this town, and town is very small. Nairobi is very small. Extremely small for somebody who is conscious and for somebody who is very keen. What Raila Odinga is looking for is neither a referendum, is not a reduction of cost of living. He is not talking about IBC as such, nor is he talking about judiciary. Because who doesn't know that when you are appointing the magistrates and the judges vetting board, he was a prime minister, Kalonzo Musyoka was a vice president, and Moses Wetangula was the foreign minister. They participated in the selection. When you're appointing Justice William Mutunga and his team in the Supreme Court, he was very involved, and I personally know he was very gratified that Willie took the helm. When we are appointing the IBC, very close friends of his, and now erstwhile rivals, so-called, he was very participating. It exactly means now that Raila Odinga, particularly, because Kalonzo got a job recently, is now representing the government of Cyprus. Wetangula is riding in town in the state-of-the-art government-fueled vehicles and an office, and is a leader. Raila Odinga is looking for a job. I can tell you this. He is looking for a job. He wants to use the referendum to manipulate a scenario, and I'm private to information that he is also sending in direct emissaries. If I am considered for something, I can stop this ulabalu. You don't know.
Let's come back to the conversation at hand. And Honorable Okoth, the 13 points you have brought up, you know, in your agenda for push for referendum. These are things that have been happening over the years. Let's be really honest with ourselves. Don't you think it's a bit too soon to bring up these issues, knowing that the government has only been in place for a year, like you said, going through the honeymoon.
Called it
honeymoon phase.
Honeymoon 1 year.
Don't you think it's a bit too soon to call for that referendum, knowing that these issues are issues that have affected us for a very long time?
That is why when we say we're in the year of the Jubilee, 50 years on, my interest in this and our interest in this is to make sure that the next 50 years we are not doomed to repeating the same mistakes that we've seen in the past.
These people calling for these things, all of them have been in government. That, like you mentioned, Raila was prime minister.
Mutegi, with all due respect,
Sure.
you want to discuss personalities. Your friend here has done the same.
No.
No. But you will let me discuss the issues.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Proceed.
Go
But
ahead.
if you want to discuss personalities, feel free.
But they were there in government.
I am a new member of parliament. I'm a member of CORD, and I will discuss the issues if you let me discuss the issues.
Please do.
Proceed.
The Jubilee government, during its honeymoon, has given Kenyans sleepless night. From Bungoma to Wajir to Eastleigh, where we still have a concentration camp in Kasarani that is against the fundamental rights of our constitution. So if we are going back to a system where arbitrary arrests and mass collective punishment of Kenyans of Muslim origin, of Somali origin is fine, then let me know about that. But I don't think that is fine, and we're going to call up on those issues. If we're going to a system where the government will be run by 2 ethnic groups, and that is fine and comfortable with you, that because we cannot say the government of President Kibaki and Prime Minister Raila Odinga was run by 2 ethnic groups. It was not. It was a government that represented the face of Kenya. So we want to call out these things, and you may be ignoring it. Let us give you the issue of the cost of living. Let us give you the cost of living.
The Minister for Foreign Affairs from where?
Let me just give you the issue of the cost of living. The cost of living right now, which is what matters to the citizens that elected us at the ground level, that give us the legitimacy to sit in this position to speak for them. We were promised by Jubilee in their campaign that the cost of unga would go down to 60 shillings. It was 90 shillings. It has gone back to 115 shillings. In some places, it's as high as 125 shillings. The cost of milk has gone from 30 shillings to 50 shillings. The cost of sugar has gone up. So if you don't want to address those issues, you are leaving Kenyans behind.
How will the referendum help?
It is not all of the issues that we said will be done in a referendum. And I think you have to be patient with us. Give us within 2 weeks. You'll see our full technical team of the referendum is out, and some of the questions we're putting together that need to be put out for the referendum will be out in 2 weeks. If in 2 weeks you don't call me back here to tell you these are our key questions for the referendum, we will let you. But the referendum is not going to be 13 points. Some of those issues can be addressed differently. And that is why we were calling for a national dialogue. You remember President Uhuru Kenyatta said he is ready for national dialogue. I don't know what Mademoni whispered in his ears for him to turn back and said that. But a national dialogue is not calling Raila Odinga. It's not about Raila Odinga as one person to come have tea at State House. Raila Odinga can afford his tea anywhere he wants. And Raila Odinga is fighting for Kenyans, not asking for a job as was misrepresented here. A national dialogue would pull together representatives of civil society, representatives of our student leaders and young people, representatives of the women and the farmers. A government that's allergic to welcoming an opportunity to structure a conversation with its people and then take those feedback from that conversation. It would not give any advantage to CORD. It would bring a chance for all Kenyans to be heard at a table, and then that would give a guidance to say, National Assembly, please go ahead and make legislation, make these things a reality, the results of what we've had in the national dialogue. That is why we've had this issue going back and forth. But if you reduce it to, Raila Odinga knows my phone number, he should call me anytime. That's fine, that's your business with him. But that does not mean you're getting the young people, you're speaking to the young people, you're not speaking to the women, you're not speaking to the farmers who are not being paid. From the maize farmers to the sugar farmers who we don't even know who's importing sugar into this country and ruining their lives, to the tea farmers. We've got a petition in the Senate to try check what's going on in the tea sector. But if you go here just to Limuru, farmers will tell you they're having hard times because the cost of tea has really, you know, the market price for tea has really gone down. So let us discuss those bread and butter issues, and the more we keep insisting who was in government when won't really help us, because right now we have a government that has a mandate in the executive, we have a government that has a majority in the legislature and can make important decisions.
Okay. Allow him to speak.
In the Sarafina movie, Whoopi Goldberg says, the celebrated actress from South Africa, that history is so rich. You cannot get out of history. And it's Marcus Garvey who said that people without a culture is like a tree without roots. We must be proud of our roots and where we come from. Therefore, if we had opportunity in our lifetime, if I was a cabinet minister for a record 30 years in this country, then even as I criticize those who take over from my leadership, I should also ask, what did I do to my people? Let me tell you, there's something that these guys in CORD are mesmerizing about. And this is about just a loss of an election. Now you have heard very clearly from my colleague here, my good friend, that the 13 issues are not the referendum issues. But those are the 13 issues they are talking about. There's another point he has raised. When Raila Odinga was traveling to United States, I don't know to do what, because we have never seen his lecture papers or his lecture videos. The only thing I saw is him talking on YouTube to another television station, not Citizen, and he's saying about the agro-leasing should be paid and the projects were completed. But when he came to Uhuru Park, straight from Jomo Kenyatta Airport, he talked from the other end of the mouth. I think because he's a leader, that's why he's being criticized. It's not in his person. It's because when you're in America, you gave an exclusive interview to a national television station, and you said that deal is okay. But when you came here, you want to propagate something different. I want my colleagues in the CORD to ask themselves, because we have 24 governors, the audit queries that Agnes Odhiambo, the controller of budget, is raising, are they not...
She's also from Jubilee?
Yeah?
Is she also from two tribes?
No, she's a global person. She was a very good manager even at CDF. She's a controller of budget, and we respect her very much.
Exactly.
Agnes Odhiambo. I'm telling you,
She's not from the two tribes.
the issues she
Her
has...
name does not betray
the issues... Can I finish now? Can I finish? I don't want to engage in the ethnic thing, because you can sanitize your feelings and go very happy that you attack two communities on television or on radio, but it is not going to add Ugali or Mena or Gedere or Mutungo on anybody on Mudokoi. I want to tell you this, that we should be asking about the audit queries of the monies that have been allocated. I just saw you have newspaper reviews in the morning in your waiting room here. There are issues that are being raised. Also, we as members of parliament, the 290 constituencies, we have been allocated a lot of money. A lot of money on CDF. On average, every constituency is receiving 110. The smaller constituencies like mine receiving 95. Other constituencies are receiving 120, 150. What we should be asking ourselves, why are we so obsessed as CORD members with the politics of consumption? Why can't we talk about politics of production? You are talking about tea here. I know there is that petition being executed very ably by a CORD senator called Chris Obure, a senior member and a former finance minister of this country. He is tackling that issue in the Senate. The same petition of tea is being processed in my Committee of Agriculture and Cooperatives, brought by the Imenti South Member of Parliament, Honorable Kaduri Murungi, and we are tackling that issue at the National Assembly. Just last week, we had 3 hearings in order to deal with the issue of the cess and the issue of the VAT and the issue of other taxations on exports. We have talked to the Cabinet Secretary, Agriculture. We have talked to the Cabinet Secretary, Treasury, about that particular matter. You know, today there is an issue about coffee in Nyeri. But I'm not talking about the referendum. That issue will be processed by the county government, and also the matter is being tackled by the National Assembly. But because it's being tackled at the county level, I leave it at the county level so that I concentrate on other matters. I think the point that is here is that CORD needs to be in opposition because there's also a constitutional provision. And whatever they are doing is not criminal in terms of criticizing the government, in terms of calling for the whatever. But all we are saying is that they appear to be aimless. Because the politics, I don't want to repeat this, the politics of consumption, I think we should be asking, in my county, in my constituency of Mukoroini, am I doing any irrigation project? Am I educating every child that needs to go to school? In my constituency, am I putting money in REA to put electricity? There's so much money that is coming through CDF and through the county government is what should concern us. I think the opposition can occupy itself more responsibly and more legitimately with the constitutional responsibilities and duties of critiquing, criticizing, correcting the governance that is already in place. We are barely a year since the new government was put in place.
Honorable Okos.
But if you are attacking, finally,
yes.
If you are attacking IBC, judiciary, parliament, you are attacking everybody. The next, you are going to attack yourself, and they are already attacking themselves because they appear to be intellectually bereft. Can you tell me, in the parliament, in the National Assembly?
Address me.
No, in the National Assembly.
Yes.
What issues have you brought in the National Assembly to deal with the matters you are talking about inside the parliament? You are a member of parliament, you are in the Senate, and you are in the National Assembly, yet you are being bastardized outside there for an ulterior motive that you may not be very conscious of, and exactly the outcome of the same will mean that there is a judgment that you are not able to deliver. I think these guys are very confused.
Let him.
We need to pray for them.
Let him respond.
Sincere prayers.
Yes, maybe.
National prayers. Domestic prayers.
If you have, do you have
They do not even, by the way, they even refuse to attend the National Breakfast Prayer Meeting. They are opposed to everything, including prayers.
Do you have a response to?
I think the strategy here is very clear, and I hope you'll take control, that he wants to dominate all the time and not let us speak about anything.
Go ahead.
else.
That's why we've given you your time. Go ahead.
Let us talk about the important issues again. When you look at the 1 year that Jubilee has been in power, and it's been more than 1 year, and what happens in the National Assembly when we have the tyranny of numbers there. When we talk about the cabinet appointments and calling in, for instance, let me give you, for instance, youth representation, which are national principles and values, okay? The president did very well by getting one of the permanent secretaries to be one person with disabilities. But in all his cabinet appointments and in his appointments of the permanent secretaries, serious government level officials, there is no youth leader at all who was appointed to any of those things. There's a government that's anti-youth here, very clearly. If you look at the matter of, for instance, the TNA party, it's very ably led by a chairman, Johnson Sakaja, under 35.
Thank you very much.
Yet the same government, I don't need your gratitude, the same government cannot, find competent young people, like myself, to serve as permanent secretaries to lead the board of this. Yes.
When you say the government is anti-youth,
absolutely.
Do you know anything about Uwezo Fund?
Let us talk about that. Why did it take a government that told us this Uwezo Fund would be given as grant? It came up with another idea that we can debate good or not, that now it's a revolving fund with 1% interest. Do you know that a 1% interest fund excludes young Muslims in this nation from participating because the dictates of the Islamic faith says you cannot do business that's based on interest like that? So let me tell you, the other thing is, Uwezo Fund is finally coming through. Anwar Guru is a cabinet secretary for devolution. And she's one of the top performing leaders in this country.
Thank you.
Yet at the same time, these are the same people who are collecting signatures to get rid of her. And I had to stand up as a feminist to say, you cannot get rid of one of the few women leaders standing up there as role model for our young girls and sisters to go out and push her for whatever extortion is. And it's very shameful that the Jubilee people have not held their own.
You are not answering a question.
I am answering because you've talked about Uwezo Fund, and
yes,
it matters on these principles.
Yeah.
Right now, Uwezo Fund would not have reached our people. It's taken a long time. We in Parliament sat down and finally got the regulations in, and it's been done. But those are some of the questions you should ask yourself. Why didn't the government make that happen immediately so our young people would already been doing business for years?
But government is not Parliament.
It was Parliament.
That's ridiculous for you to say that government is not
It
Parliament.
was Parliament.
Parliament and the government, we are all different branches of the government. And all we are saying is one political divide has got the control of the executive and can coordinate with its control in the parliamentary and the legislative side. So I think those are two the important things. Let me go back to a referendum issue.
But on Uwezo, before you leave Uwezo,
I did not interrupt you, so sorry.
Let him finish and we'll come back to that. Let Honorable Okoth finish.
A key important thing we said when this gentleman was in his soapbox was that you cannot forget your history. We must remember the history of this country very importantly. In the 1960s, we had regional governments that the first Kenyatta government got rid of. We had multi-partyism and vibrant opposition that was gotten rid of. We are now seeing similar patterns, and we must make sure we guard against them very vehemently so that they don't come back. We want a full freedom of press, where the press makes its own decisions and is not controlled or intimidated by security apparatus on what to broadcast and what not to broadcast.
Do you think that's logical? Do you think that will work?
Yes, journalists should professionally be held accountable if, for instance, media houses are broadcasting hate speech. But they should not be controlled and threatened with licenses preemptively. We should not have judges who make preemptive judgments and say, if this happens in future, you'll be responsible for. Because there's no chapter of the law that does things like that. But all I want to say is that we fought for devolution. We've got a new constitution. It's part of the reform movement in this country. And Kenyans must stick with it. That reform is an ongoing process, and occasionally you'll get former reformists who are now comfortable to be anti-reformists because they're in government, not pushing forward the agenda. But we must make sure we keep insisting that, for instance, the provincial administration was supposed to be reformed and changed drastically. That has not happened. Instead, what we are seeing is a provincial administration that's being encouraged to go over and above the governors, and is being given the resources and the tools to go over and above the governors and undermine the governors. We in CORD will fight for devolution. We want a 40% allocation. My honorable member here mentioned that we control park and pick or audited accounts and things like that in the parliament. That's very important to mention because we're using audited accounts of what year? Current budget is 1.8 trillion. If Jubilee is serious that it supports devolution and wants to give 40% of the money to the governors and the county assemblies from Kirinyaga to Kakamega, we must be talking about, at the minimum, 700 billion of current accounts. So to give to the county governments to manage and run and bring devolution and make it a reality, not 216 billion that's currently being spoken about. So those are the types of things we want to push forward for, that our governors are fully in charge of issues in their areas, they have the full funding, and the members of the county assemblies make big budgets at the local level for their county issues, and that most importantly, when we come to issues such as national cohesion and ethnic cohesion, when I speak about tribalism, it does not make me a tribalist. When I point out that the government is not performing in the right way it should, it does not mean that I am attacking the government or attacking any ethnic group in Kenya. As we say in Kiswahili, kupinga ukabila si ukabila. Mimi nikipinga ukabila haimaanishi mimi ni mkabila. Napenda Wakenya wote wa kabila zote. Haswa hizi jamii mbili ambazo nasema zimetumika kwenye serikali, ati hao peke yao ndio watapata matunda ya uongozi. Si ukweli, kwa maana ukiangalia Wakenya wanataka maendeleo hapa chini. And so let us not just talk about tribe as ethnic affiliation, but really let us also look at tribe in terms of which Kenyans are doing better today than they were last year, and which Kenyans are being left behind. Can't get money for medicine, send their children to school, keep their farms operating, those types of things.
Honorable Okoth, let me ask you a question, and it comes from the 13 points that you've raised as a party, one of them being inflation. Yeah, you've aptly mentioned here that the Jubilee government promised to, see inflation go down, but it's been on an upward trend. Now, my question to you is, has CORD thought about how they can handle the issue of inflation? I mean, what are some of the suggestions you have? Because everything has to have a solution. And I'm sure by the time you brought up this point, you have thought of a solution. So kindly share with us maybe one solution you see in us, seeing a drop in the inflation rates.
I think one of the key important things that we'll talk about is economic inclusivity. Right now, some of the big macroeconomic indicators are showing Kenya's economy is growing. But the question is, what are the benefits of that economic growth? Is it really trickling down to every Kenyan? No, it's not. So one of the key things we would push as a priority as CORD people would be the national employment policy. We want a policy whereby you don't see the sad stories that Citizen showed the other day, that a young man goes and gets a degree and all he can get is a job as a security guard on somebody's farm, working 12 hours a day. We want to come up with a serious national employment policy, a job creation policy. That's a priority. It was in the Jubilee manifesto. A serious implementation for it in the first year has not happened. It has just been left on the side. And I think, frankly, we must ask ourselves, is this government, for instance, too preoccupied with the ICC that they have forgotten that they're supposed to actually be taking care of millions of Kenyans who are expecting those jobs to be created? Once you put Kenyans into jobs, we're feeling more inclusion. But as long as you're leaving youth bulge, young people unemployed, in the 1960s we had only 3 million young people. Today we have 16 million young people. This is a recipe for disaster, and unless we come up with a youth policy that seriously engages them, Uwezo Fund is one step in the right directions. Please say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Uwezo Fund is one step in the right direction. I think as a member of parliament and all members of CORD, we will make sure that that fund is topped up year by year, even if not to the tune of 6 billion, at least there's a top up of $1 billion or something, and it revolves and reaches our people. So we want to do those things. We want to make sure the Uwezo Fund regulations are made even easier so that more groups can get access to the funding, do their businesses, return it, and help other people. So those are the kinds of places, I think, if you're talking about economic inclusion, not just talking about inflation and how well is the economy performing. Because if you look at even the Eurobond that the Jubilee government just passed successfully, when you compare it with a country like Ivory Coast just floated a Eurobond, and Ivory Coast is a country that's come out of civil war and bankruptcy. And they floated a Eurobond at a cheaper cost than Kenya, 2 weeks after we floated ours. So what that tells you something about, are we really getting the best out of this government? Are we as the opposition pushing them hard enough to keep them on their toe, and where necessary to give them sleepless nights, as they've been giving Kenyans sleepless nights for a whole year during their honeymoon?
I think what is lacking from CORD is patience. I was reading a ruling that was made
all Kenyans are impatient right now. They're suffering and they're impatient.
Can I proceed, please? That impatience is the worst evil in leadership because it makes you reckless. You make ad hoc decisions. You move from one agenda to the other. You leave your flock very confused. I was reading a judgment in Southwest Florida that was made last week of a lady called Cynthia Robinson, who went to court in 1996 when her 36-year-old husband, the father of her 2 children, died of cancer. Lung cancer. Yeah? Lung cancer because of the Reynolds tobacco. Yes. You see, I read that, and so the patience of the judicial process. It requires you personally to be judicious, to have ability to listen, to have ability to interrogate. I'm very happy about his statement on the leadership of TNA, that Sakaja is a very youthful person. I would like to see the opposite in CORD. There's nobody. The difference between the leader, the chairman of TNA, and anybody who is at the top of CORD is maybe 60 years. at least over 50 years. I'm very happy also about your position on Anwaigo. And I want to credit Honorable Court, because sometimes people think that we are very antagonistic and we are enemies. In Parliament, even when he's criticizing, I know here we are disagreeing, particularly about his constituency, even in the issues of land. He has been very passionate, and I'm sure he is one of the individuals who may appreciate that there are some reforms happening, despite our earlier skepticism about what Madam Charity Gill will do. There's something that is happening at the land legislature, and so on and so forth. Some of us took positions in Parliament, although we are in Jubilee, to criticize Charity Gill earlier because of constitutional issues. So while some people make it, and some CORD members, including him and others that I know, they took an opposite position to defend the cabinet secretary appointed by Uhuru Kenyatta, that are Jubilee CS. It means that sometimes in Parliament, and many times, we take positions based on personal conscience and the fact that you are representative of the people. And it is wrong for anyone to say that because a person is a member of Jubilee, you are in government. By the way, people should understand, God is also in government. It's only that Raila is not in government because Raila wanted to be the head of the executive. Because his letterhead, his business card, has a coat of arms. Government of Kenya, Kenya National Assembly. We are part of government, only that we are in the other arm. There is the executive, that Uhuru, and the cabinet secretaries, and those executive, the bureaucracy. The other arm is the judiciary. And then parliament. So what CORD members in parliament should do is to play their rightful, dutiful role of checkmating, interrogating, objectively criticizing the government of the day, that is the executive, by bringing motions before the House. For instance, when you talk about Euroboard, I have personally published, I have authored an amendment, who is now with the publisher, the government printer, on amendment of the Central Bank Act, so that we can digitize the floating of the treasury boards, and also to lower the denominations. You know, now we talk about 100,000. So those youth groups in the grassroots who may raise 5,000 or 10,000 may not buy a treasury board. We want Kenyans, the youth people, to do business with government. This is an amendment that has gone through the whole system. It's only now awaiting to be published and to come to the floor of the House. Although I'm in Jubilee, I am not part of the executive. I should be able to bring amendments that will redeem issues pertinent that will improve governance. The same with the CORD. Mutegi and Narua, our responsibility in Parliament is to ensure that the issues that require refreshing in order to implement this new constitution, in order to bring the renewal, in order for the Third Republic, that is Kenya now, beyond the First Republic and then multipartyism, and now the new order, strengthens the institution. And the only way that we can anchor democracy in the Republic of Kenya and to celebrate the sovereign will of the people of Kenya is by ensuring that we strengthen, we respect the institutions created in 2010, legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and other subsidiary institutions below them, so that we are able to serve our people better.
I'll have to cut it short. Time is not on our side. Time is not on our side. But then I'll ask you a question. Yes, because you're with the government. Yes. Do you feel like the government has failed the people of Kenya, seeing as what is exactly is going on in the country in terms of insecurity, in terms of unemployment, in terms of inflation? Do you think the government has failed us?
What I would say, given what we are doing about certificates for KCP and KCSE, given that 35% increase in the funding of schools, secondary schools, tuition education, given the 10,000 kilometers that we want to do under Jubilee, given the 1 million acres that we are funding and the money you have allocated this year for irrigation, I think by and large, there is a solid effort which needs to be recognized. Issue of security should worry everybody, politicians, business people, the media, the religious people. It should worry God equally as Jubilee. Because this is about terrorism. It's about people who are evil, demons, people who are involved in satanic activities of killing, of maiming, of touching houses, of raping. It should not be a blame game. The greatest shame that comes to any leader of whatever caliber, elected or not elected, is to blame Jubilee for Al-Shabaab. What we should be doing, like Americans did, like other countries do, is to combine our efforts, work together. What God should have done, just like they spoke with Uhuru for 1 hour, the leader of God, before he went to America. When he came back, he should be telling his followers, have I called the president of Kenya for even 1 minute to tell him, sir, your excellency, sir, the president of Kenya, my president, I am back on this issue of security, let's talk. But he's talking at Uhuru.
Honorable Lokoth, what's your take on that? He's saying it's not, insecurity in the country, for example, is not a Jubilee issue, but more a national issue, we should all be involved in it. What's your take on that?
We as COD are not involved in appointing the Minister for Security. It was passed through Parliament, and with the numbers on the Jubilee side, we got somebody who's a specialist in catering to take care of our national security. It's flopping on us. It flopped on us on Westgate. It's flopped on us on Lamu. And I can tell you, for instance, forget about Al-Shabaab. Nobody can support and praise Al-Shabaab. And this attempt to say somehow COD is celebrating victories of Al-Shabaab is absolutely insulting and irresponsible. What we must say, for instance, is going ahead to Isli to disrupt the business community there and take hundreds, including women and children, and lock them up, even now, during the holy month of Ramadan, against constitutional principles because of some...
fact?
That is a fact. We can go to Kasarani with you right now and verify. You ask me, it's a fact. So he has his facts, I have my facts. Let's go to Kasarani and you do your job as a journalist and verify. Thank you. Okay? So don't just take things at face value. We have people being held at Kasarani. Go prove me wrong. Okay? So we go back to the issue. COD did not arrest people from Isli and put them in Kasarani. In the whole year since Jubilee has been leading the war on terror, we have to be sensitive on security matters and give the government the benefit of the doubt. But the string of extrajudicial killings, especially in the coastal provinces, against Muslim leaders, without explanation, without accountability, without anyone, if it wasn't being done by government, the culprits being brought to book, has sort of shaken our confidence in what is our approach to security. It should not be in a way that divides Kenyans along any religious line or tribal line. So we have to be very careful, because in that case, you let Al-Shabaab win.
Do you remember what
we are
happened in
patriotic. We remember what
happened in Mount Elgon when there was a problem there?
Yes, tell me what's your point about it. I don't understand you.
There was a massive military operation.
Yes, massive military. That is what I'm asking you. He has said we should strengthen our institutions. I agree. I also said we should implement and protect our constitution fully. What are the rights and procedures in our constitution for government to provide security? Let the government not use the hammer to kill a mosquito. There has to be ways to be done these things properly. For instance, let me tell you, one of the things I oppose very vehemently, that Parliament has been used and the numbers of Jubilee have been used, is to adulterate and bastardize the National Police Act and the National Police Service Commission Act. Those things have been taken away to take us back to the old days when one imperial inspector general could do things by himself without having a civilian oversight. And that is taking us backwards. We want to move forward in a way where civil rights are protected, police operations are being done in good ways, and those types of things. So those are some of the things I say. The dispatchment of our military for operations in Kenyan territory must be done by the approval of the National Assembly. And Honorable Kabando and myself should be asking ourselves, why are we abdicating our duties and keeping quiet and being comfortable as the military is being used in internal operations without parliamentary approval or without parliamentary oversight? Those are the type of things we're saying. Let's not. Yes, it is true.
Right,
the military is being used. Parliament has not been
time is not on our side.
And declaration of war and deployment of military troops in Kenya on foreign soil is a prerogative of Parliament and must be done with the authorization, because they're going to fight for the Kenyan people and they will die for the Kenyan people. And we need to know how many Kenyans are dying in Somalia And what are we going to do? What's a plan to exit Somalia in a responsible manner that doesn't let Somalia collapse, but also that doesn't let us stay there forever under AMISOM or under the UN or in any way. Let us push our national interests in a very careful way. Let us protect our institutions, and let us fully implement our
Honourable
constitution.
Okoth, time is not on our side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you each a minute, you know, final comments, a minute, and I'll start with you.
We have a constitutional right to go to a referendum. I am sorry that it makes the Jubilee people uncomfortable. We are confident we as CORD will speak to the Kenyan people. We will gather more than 1 million signatures as the process requires. We will gain the concurrence of more than the 50% of our county assemblies, and this matter will come to Parliament, and we will talk about the major referendum issues, including the protection and solid footing of devolution. So let us do this in a peaceful manner. Let us not demonize each other. I wish Jubilee government the best in implementing their manifesto. Let them not focus too much on...
The referendum will be done by whom? Because you have no trust in the electoral commission. Who will do the referendum?
The referendum will be done. Don't worry.
Who will supervise?
In the next 2 weeks, you'll hear from our technical committee.
All right, then. Honourable Kabando.
I beseech the leadership of CORD, and particularly my colleagues in the National Assembly and the Senate, to seize the moment and lead from the front, and whatever influence external comes from whoever, we should always prioritize our responsibility. The issues that my colleague and his other colleagues in CORD are raising are issues that can be raised on the floor of the House through committees. You can bring a petition, they can be interrogated, just like they brought the petition on IBC, which was lost. I would like to state that politicization of security, trivialization of security is one huge irresponsible act. In fact, it should worry Kenyans that as people are being massacred in Peketoni, this leadership of CORD is not interested. They are only talking in rallies. You have never even seen a single individual of them going to condole those who are being killed. And I'm not saying they are responsible for those, but I'm saying they should take responsibility in terms of assuaging the national feeling that they are only interested in streetwise anarchy, the rule of the jungle. Now they want a referendum. IBC is not going to be in charge. They are saying in the next 2 weeks, are they going to create their own IBC? You cannot operate a referendum. You cannot operate parliament. You cannot handle issues of security outside the constitution. No matter the insult you give to Olelenku or any other person, you can bring a motion in parliament to question performance of a cabinet secretary. So long as you have not done that, I think the best you can do to us is to shut up.
All right, there you have it. Honourable Okoth, Honourable Kabando, thank you so much for coming this morning. Interesting conversation we're having here on the Power Breakfast Show. Sadly, our time is up. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.